Hi, I'm Jen. Welcome to my autoimmune path, which is my story of living with autoimmune disease all these years. I've had it for approximately 30 years, and my diagnosis all those years ago was colitis, ulcerative colitis. Today, I want to delve into a little bit about my journey with having to take steroids. So the steroids that I'm referring to are the corticosteroids. It's not any kind of steroid like you would take to try to build muscle mass or do bodybuilding or anything like that. I believe those are called anabolic steroids. Anyway, these are steroids that reduce inflammation in your body. And so the first time that I ever had to take those, and typically what they prescribe for you, the doctors prescribe for you, is called prednisone, was shortly before I got married. As I've mentioned before, I was diagnosed in 1995, and then I had several years of taking a certain medication called Asacol, and it did really, really well for me. It reduced my symptoms and allowed my colon to do a lot of healing, and I'm just really grateful for those years. But then in 1998, I got married, and there were just a lot of other things going on. My dad was working out of state. He was doing some consulting work. It turned out that my mom had to have some surgery on her foot a number of months before we got married. And so I was her caregiver. I stayed home that summer and took care of her. And she was not able to put any weight on her foot after that surgery for like 6 weeks. And so it is some pretty intense caregiving. We had some home health come in a little bit to check on her, but for the most part, it was me. And I mean, I didn't mind. I'm an only child, and my mom and I were extremely close, but it was just me. I don't have any siblings that I could have shared the load with. So she had the surgery, and that summer, I was just there taking care of her. I remember that when my dad would fly home for the weekend, then I was kind of out the door. He would be there taking care of her, and I had a lot of stuff to get done those weekends that he would fly home, because I had a wedding to prepare for. We were, my fiance at the time, we were engaged. And so I had a wedding dress to find and bridesmaids dresses to pick out, and just, a lot of that logistical stuff. And so, and then came the summer. We got married in October. And so I think my mom had her surgery like maybe in May, somewhere around in there. And then, as I've discussed on a previous episode with my diagnosis, the heat in the summertime in the South, it can be really brutal. And for some reason, that always seemed to kind of correlate with me and my disease, in that I would flare in the summertime. I mean, I think I've only had one other time that I flared that wasn't in the summertime. So it's just something about perhaps how taxing the heat is on your body. Your body's already trying to deal with that, and then on top of it, you've got this autoimmune condition where your body is sort of attacking itself. It was just too much, I think. I think things just kind of went off the rails in the summer. So, I'd been taking care of Mom, and then the heat of the summer hit, and this, by, I guess, probably September, early October, my colitis was pretty bad. So didn't want to be all flared up to get married. And so I finally called the clinic where my GI doctor was. And they said, oh, well, he's no longer here, which I just thought, that's pretty wild. I didn't know why they had maybe not mailed out a letter to say he was leaving. But anyway, I had not had to go see him in quite some time because I had been doing so well before that. So I didn't know that he had left that practice and he had moved to another state. But it kind of broke my heart because he was such a kind man and just had a great bedside manner, and was very, very smart, and also just very open to all kinds of new creative ideas, treatments, whatever. It was just, he wasn't in a little box. His mindset was not in a little box, which I very much appreciated. But they said, well, if you need to come in, we'll just have to put you in with one of the other doctors. And so I didn't know who to pick. They just kind of picked it for me. And I went in and saw this new doctor, and he said, well, we probably need to start you on some steroid, which I really didn't want to hear that. But I guess it was just kind of the option, I mean, in order to get that inflammation reduced quickly so that I could, have an incident-free wedding, where I wasn't worried about having to run to the bathroom in the middle of a ceremony or something. We discussed that was probably what had to be done. So he called me in what's called a Medrol dose pack, which is just kind of the way some steroids are packaged. It's like a little, I don't know, it's got foil on one side, and then on the other side, the little kind of bubble blister things where the little pill sits in, and then you're able to just kind of push it through the foil when you're ready to take a particular pill. And the way it's structured is that it's labeled, first week, second week, third week. There may be 3 separate packs, or they may all be combined. But it's kind of a system where it will taper you down. So you start at one dose, and then it goes down the next week, and then goes down even further the third week. So I was on that first dose right before I got married. Then I guess the week that we were going on our honeymoon, and by the way, everything was great, had a wonderful wedding, and nothing, I didn't have anything dramatic, So the second week of the Medrol dose pack, we were on our honeymoon, and actually it was kind of a good thing, I guess, in that steroids can kind of give you a little bit of boost. I'm not sure exactly the scientific reason for that, but it can it's almost like it gives you a little energy. And so we went to London on our honeymoon, and so I just, instead of feeling really run down and ragged from being sick, I had a little extra energy to be able to, we did a lot. We saw a lot of things. We went to a lot of museums, and just saw a play at the National Theater and all kinds of stuff. And so that really helped me. And then we got home, and so that would have been that third week of the Medrol dose pack. And when I transitioned down to that lowest dose on that third week, that was when it was kind of this moment of, oh boy, My body is not liking this, and I was kind of starting to flare a little bit again. So I went back into the doctor, and I told him that I had some concerns because I was worried that I could get, kind of addicted to this stuff. Like, and not like I don't know. It's kind of an interesting concept. Like, I'm not talking about like drug addiction type, but with these steroids, your body really likes it, but when you kind of start to pull back and taper down and take it away, you can really react strongly. It can be a very difficult process, and your body is basically saying, no, don't take that away. I like that. I like the way that feels, because all of a sudden this inflammation starts coming back, and your body can't kind of cope with it, and it can be very overwhelming, and that's why the flare comes back. And so, he was acting like, oh well, you just need to take another Medrol dose pack, and I was really concerned that I would take another and the same thing would happen. How do you ever get off of this stuff was my main concern. But I went ahead and said, okay, fine, I'll do another one for another 3 weeks. In the meantime, my brand new husband did some research, and he looked on Amazon. And this was back when Amazon was only books, which is just kind of hard to believe. But he found a book called Breaking the Vicious Cycle. And it was recommended for gut health and autoimmune and inflammatory bowel. And so he ordered it for me, and it came in, and we both read it. And so it was written by a lady named Elaine Gottschall, and her daughter had a very severe case when she was a child of inflammatory bowel. I don't remember if it was Crohn's or colitis. And they had taken her to multiple doctors, and just she wasn't doing well. And finally someone told them about this physician who practiced, I believe, in New York City, and I think his name was Sidney Haas. And as Elaine Gottschall says in the book, she says he was the first doctor to actually ask us, what are you feeding the child? And so he had created a diet, and it's called the Specific Carbohydrate Diet. He treated a lot of patients with gut issues, even things like celiac disease, which way back then, this was probably in like the 50s or the 60s when he was, really in his heyday of practicing, was fairly new and uncommon. So the premise of this diet, and she goes into detail about it and why it works in that book, because this mom, they put their daughter on the diet, and she got so much better, and they didn't really know how long to keep her on it, because the physician actually passed away after several years, so they just kept her on it for a long time, like probably 7 or 8 years or something like that, and then she was fine like for the rest of her life, I guess, because her gut was able to heal after being on that diet for so long. But anyway, the premise of the diet is that you take certain carbohydrates out and only eat certain ones, and it called for taking out all the grains, so no wheat, rice, barley, millet, anything like that. And also to not eat starchy vegetables, so no potatoes, I can't remember what all, but and then also one big key component of it was to feed your gut with good microbiomes. And back then, the way to do it was by just eating yogurt. Like nowadays, you might could find a really good probiotic, but back then it wasn't like you could just run down, to the drugstore and pick up a bottle of probiotics. So the diet recommended to make your own yogurt and make sure it had the good cultures and everything in it. And so they recommended eating that good unsweetened yogurt every day to basically repopulate your gut, because as we all know, that is just a huge component with gut health. And so I thought, yep, this resonates with me. This is kind of a me approach. I already loved it to cook. My husband and I actually met working together at a cookware retailer, kind of a gourmet type retailer, and we both love to cook. And so I thought, sure, we can handle this, So I switched to that diet as I was kind of trying to get the taper down on that second Medrol dose pack, and things began to turn around. And it's maybe a little bit of a difficult diet in some respects, but honestly not that different from, say, these days eating paleo or keto or whatever. And that's, people do that more for like losing weight and whatnot. But it was basically grain-free, no starchy vegetables, and then eating the yogurt every day. And so that was a huge help for me. And I'm so thankful that I found, or that my husband found that book. And I've actually, done that diet several times through the years, and it's been very helpful. And yes, I have had to take steroids again in my journey, along my path with living with this disease. And I can go into some of that more, on another episode. They can be very taxing on your body. I think I've had a lot of side effects from years of being on them. It can also, interestingly, give you what's called moon face, where it makes your face really kind of round. I don't know exactly why that is. It just kind of puffs it out and makes it round. And like doctors can identify a patient pretty well. Like if they have that moon face, then they typically know, oh, you must be on some prednisone. It's very distinctive, and I actually have some photos of me, later, I don't remember how many years ago, but it was probably maybe around 15 years ago of me with the moon face when I was on steroids. So I've certainly taken my fair share. But anyway, sometimes they're there when you need them the most. They're there in a pinch, and sometimes you just have to do it. But anyway, I'd love to hear your experience with having to take steroids, and maybe how you feel about it, and was there anything particular that possibly helped you transition off of them. It can be an interesting journey. So anyway, if you would do me a favor, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. It would mean so much. I really want to grow it and have it be just a community. So thank you so much for watching today.